Strap yourselves in and hold on tight. This is the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week I have one of the most loved riders in mountain biking on the show. I'm talking about Graham Agassiz. And Aggy is a super easygoing guy, but he absolutely charges on his bike, and I'm sure he kills it on his snowboard as well. Born and raised in one of the birthplaces of freeride mountain biking, Kamloops, BC, this Canadian is known for his loose, playful style, his dance moves, and the heavy metal soundtrack that defines his life. On the show, we talk about BMX, moto, Rampage, injury, and a whole lot more. Aggy's one of those dudes whose life is all about having a good time at all times, and that makes for a great podcast. Before we get into it, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement and tell your friends about the show. I also want to thank my great sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Evo, Spy Optics, Stanley, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Rescue Water. Now, let's talk with Graham Agassiz. We were going to do this interview last week, and you had an Evil bike tour to go on.
Yeah.
And Evil is a big move for you, as you had a 12-year run on Kona that ended earlier this year. 12 years is a long time to be on one brand. For most people, that's a full career. And when you were an up-and-comer, getting on the Clump team was your dream, and you made that happen. Who was that first Clump team when you were coming up and you were a Grom thinking about being a pro biker? Who was that team that you were really fired up on?
For sure, yeah. I mean, growing up on the Disorder films and stuff, right? And, you know, you got Paul Bass and John Cowan, and then the LeConaghy brothers were on there as well. And you got Bordeaux and, you know, just so many other big mountain dudes as well. But, yeah, that was kind of the dream team to be on when you're, you know, a kid growing up my age and seeing the Disorder films and just all the cool trips they were doing. And they came to Kamloops and filmed every year too. And normally the Clump team would be on that, and they'd build something really cool in the bike park, and then they'd leave it. And then it was always free game for us to go shred it after. And, you know, we get to see those dudes ride and film, and we'd sneak out of school and stuff to go watch that. And often I was the guy helping out, pressing record and stuff on the cameras, and being the total Grom that's just there hanging out and watching. And it's cool, you know, like now we do that here in the ranch, and you see those young kids who are keen and helping out and stuff, and then like a few years later they're making a name for themselves as well. So it kind of goes full circle.
When you dream of getting on this team and you're helping Derek out and everything when they're filming, is it something that years later, maybe someone you hadn't seen in a while was like, you were that little kid that was in Kamloops for that one shoot?
Yeah, totally. Some of the guys like Axel Fosfet, for example, they're filming below my house. I was down there because it was right below my house, and, you know, I was pressing record, and I don't even know how old I was back then, quite young, maybe 15 or 16, like just getting into mountain biking. And then it's like I shoot with Axel on the regular now. He's like kind of an in-house dude for Evil. So yeah, it's just super cool and how it all works out that way.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty unbelievable for you for that all to come together. And I would think over your time with Kona, I mean, you must have outlasted groups of athletes, team managers, marketing guys. And I'm going to guess that you're an easy guy to work with just based on, I met you at Rampage and you seem like a really laid back dude. So how does a relationship like that end after 12 years?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you know, like in the ski industry too, like people come and go in management roles and this and that. And it's certainly tough. You know, you build a relationship with someone, and then when that person goes, it's another person, and maybe you don't know that guy as well. And a huge part of it is just communication and how you blend with those people. And yeah, it was certainly tough. I mean, it was the only bikes I'd been on for 12 years, but it was just time. They were moving in a different direction. And, you know, I wanted to see the future young Grahams come up within the brand, and I just didn't see that platform being there anymore. And I was just trying to do more and more, and we weren't going to have that support for the younger generation to do what I did. So it was time to make a move, and it was something I was looking for a while. And Evil was one of those brands that I was always attracted to. The bikes always looked really cool. And then once I met Kevin and got to do some test rides, I was sold after the first lap and first hanging with that guy.
The brand has a cult following, and they're finally in a position where they can really do some big things, and Kevin's moved it up to Bellingham, and he's a really interesting dude. And how does this all come together? Do you have an agent involved, or do you give Kevin a call, or does he reach out to you, or how does the conversation start?
Yeah, I've never had an agent. I was really close to working with the Superheroes guys, and I was just at a point in my career where I kind of knew my numbers pretty well, and I know that I was not peaking, but I knew where I was at. It makes a lot more sense for a younger guy to get an agent. Like, I totally recommend it for, some up and coming athletes, younger people, that there's definitely some help out there. But yeah, I got invited to Retallick. There's this meeting of the minds, or melting of the minds, it's called, and a bunch of industry folk up there, and kind of spring flinger. Chad was there from Evil and Budgeon, and we just hit it off. Chad has a really cool Volkswagen, the 4x4 Synchro. And my first vehicle was an 84 Vanagon, so I was drooling over his 80 series Vanagon Synchro there, and the Synchros are the 4x4, and they're really cool. And I'm like, oh, who is this guy? And it was Chad from Evil. I was like, oh, like, I like you already. And then we had a really good time up there, and we just kind of hit it off. And then from there, we just started talking, and then Ian got introduced to Kevin, and yeah, everything just kind of fell in place really well.
Speaking of Kevin, and you as well, you've been known to play a harmonica, and I don't know if you know, but Kevin is like a pro harmonica player.
Oh, I know. And I used to fool around a little bit. Like, I have a lot of friends who play in bands and stuff, and I needed an instrument to like goof around and jam with them. But I have yet to pull it out in front of Kevin, because I haven't really touched it in years. And he's, obviously super pro at it and amazing every time he picks it up, but I'm too embarrassed to pull it out. But it lives in my backpack. Like, I travel the world with it, but it only comes out on a rare occasion.
Well, you're going to have to get free lessons on a trip with Kevin.
I know.
In terms of bikes, do they have the bike that you need? Like, do they have a pure downhill bike for you yet?
That's like the number one question. But they have this park build they do on 2 of their different trail bikes, and it's all the bike I need. Like, I brought not even the longest travel bike with me to Africa, and there's like a mandatory 90-footer at the beginning of the line, and then the last jump's like a 50-footer, but it's like a proper dirt to dirt, huge, like 30-foot lip, and one of the biggest jumps I've ever hit. And only like half of us were even hitting it. A bunch of dudes were exploding, overshooting it and stuff, like on full travel downhill bikes. And, I'm on a 150 rear with a 180 up front. Right. And I was terrified, and I was just like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just got to be really dialed here and not mess up. Don't come short or don't go deep. And then the time came, I was actually in a train, and I was following Andreu, and I think he brake checked, like, there's a little roller before the lip. I think he did a little too much of a skid on it, and he's on 26-inch wheels, and I'm on 27.5 now, and he bailed like as soon as he went off the lip, and I just kept my speed because I wasn't going to bail. And I just remember looking down through my arms, and I'm like right over top of the kid. We're all like, ah, just yelling, and he's kind of like looking back but flailing, and as soon as he hits the ground, he's like in a rag doll, but trying to shuffle his hands and run while like on the ground to get off to the edge. And I like jumped basically right over him, and I landed 3/4 the way down, and I thought I was going to explode and die, but the bike just took it. So I was pretty mind blown. I think everyone else was too. And that was a huge test for me.
That's the confidence builder in the bike?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly.
The design is a little bit different than other bikes that you've been on. Is there anything about riding an Evil that you noticed right away that's different from your Kona experience?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the bikes that I was on were very linear, so it's really easy to go through that travel if you really want to get into it. But like the new bikes, the way that Delta suspension design is set up, it's very progressive. So the deeper you get into that travel, the more ramp you get. So it kind of has that bottomless feel, but it's not just going to plow through to the bottom like your suspension. There's a lot going on there, and it's perfect for jumping and jibbing. And it seriously took me one lap, and I'm like, yep, this is the bike that I want to be on. So,
well, that's got to make you feel really good about your decision, because I was going to ask, 6 months, 8 months later, how do you feel about your move? But if you love the bikes, I would think you're feeling pretty good.
Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah. I think deep down everyone wants to be on these bikes, so I'm really stoked.
And I feel like the culture and everything that Kevin's building with the brand, it's always had that cool factor that maybe some other brands haven't had, that edge where they can do whatever the fuck they want. And it's cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone's very not sensitive, but it's a touchy industry for sure, and everyone's kind of walking on toes a little bit. But Evil, yeah, exactly, just doesn't give a fuck and just does whatever they want, and it's great. And the bikes show for it, right? I mean, they came out with that following V1, I don't know how many years ago, but it was when 29ers weren't really accepted, and then it had this crazy aggressive geometry. And, that geometry is still existing on our bikes today. So they're obviously doing something really cool, and people are definitely taking notice, and yeah, a lot of momentum behind the brand right now.
And I would say it's not only the hardcore rider either. It's dudes with money who want a cool looking bike I see too, who just have an evil bike.
Yeah, bikes aren't cheap, right? But they're not like more expensive than all the rest of the brands. They're in there with like that high end boutique level of bikes for sure. But yeah, a lot of rich people mountain bike, man, a lot of doctors, and it's crazy, but yeah.
Now we'll take it back to your youth, and you grew up in Kamloops, BC. It's pretty much the birthplace of freeride mountain biking. I guess there's two. You can look at the North Shore of Vancouver. You can look at Kamloops. And there are a bunch of legends that came out of there. Brett Tippie, who I met for like 15 minutes, and I feel like he's one of the craziest people I ever met in my life, along with Richie Slay, Craig Olson, Wade Simmons. So they're all from where you were from, and they were all inventing the sport while you were riding your tricycle. So a legendary area to come from. And I've been there a few different times. And Kamloops has a pretty sick skate park from what I remember.
Yeah, not bad. We actually had one of the worst skate parks in the world, according to Tony Hawk, because he did his birdhouse tour, I think it was. And he came to our park. Pretty sure he said it was front lines in the newspaper. We have the worst skate park he's ever ridden or something. So the city took note, and yeah, we ended up building this really cool skate park, and we actually have a really nice, legit one. And I think it's just growing. They got more plans for it as well. But yeah, it's a birthplace of freeriding in a way. And yeah, a lot of legends came out of here, and it's cool because you drive a lot of these back roads or even like along the highways and stuff. And, a lot of it's been torn down, but there's just jumps littered everywhere in the hills here. And growing up, you see that. And often I remember like being in the car with my mom, and we'd see someone like on top of some run in for a jump, and we'd just like pull over on the road and just watch these guys hit it or come down the chute or something. And it was just part of the culture here in a way. And especially where I grew up in Juniper, which is like right above the bike park. We rode there before the bike park was even built, and there was all these jumps. And the Disorder dudes, there was that show Drop In. They came to Kamloops every year, and I remember like getting out of school just to go watch, right? And there's this one iconic drop going up towards the bike park there that Super T Klassen hit back in the day. I remember helping him, a buddy of mine, we were helping him build this landing. We were putting like concrete mix in the dirt. It's just middle of summer. It's just clay, and it just gets powder here. So mixing concrete into this clay, and he built this like sketchy wood runoff on this cliff, and he totally missed the landing and everything when he hit it. He rode it out. It was super rowdy, and it was a huge crowd had formed, and it was just such a cool experience for me to be like that age. And I don't even think I was mountain biking back then, but yeah, it definitely got me into it after that. Having it in your backyard, the culture was there, and I think I felt like I was missing out. I was racing BMX at the time from 7 to 17, and racing scene versus what we saw in mountain biking. It was just, yeah, I need to get into that.
Yeah, I think the biggest inspiration of your life came from Bill Allen, who played biker Crew Jones in the movie Rad that you rented and watched way too much.
Yeah, exactly. When I was 6 years old, rented that movie VHS. Changed my life, like 100%. I even got the Rad tattoo on my leg, and yeah, I rented that all the time. And, I still get goosebumps watching the film and the qualifying segment, and there's a thunder in your heart, and just sprinting out in Cochrane, Alberta there, just along the river bend. And that movie just kind of played such a huge role in my life. It's crazy, and it's neat. I even got to meet Travis Chipreys, who's like the main stunt double in that film. And he actually played himself in the very end, but he's the Giant TM, and that was Sorgi's TM over at Giant for a long time. And so I got to hang out with him for a couple trips and stuff. And Yeah, what a film. And hearing the stories from that guy from when they were filming it was really cool.
You don't get any more street cred than being the stunt double in Rad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can be a TM anywhere and everyone has to respect you. Do you know who I am? I was Crew Jones in this scene.
Yeah, exactly. We were actually just filming in Utah, and there was this road shot we did where the boys were filming out of the truck, and there's a section of trail next to the road. And we played the song Thunder in Your Heart, like full blast on the truck. And it's like a full sprint shot. And I could hear it, and I was like, oh, I had never done that. It was like something that you always like, I'm going to do this one day. But it was hilarious. We were laughing so hard, but we got the most epic shot, and it was giving me goosebumps the whole time. And I just put the thunder down, and oh, it was awesome.
I feel like you should play that during every event, headphones in, and just get you fired up.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I might have to try that for Rampage or something.
And being Canadian, do you play any hockey or any other team sports?
I never played hockey.
Good for you, man.
I know. I was actually bullied by a lot of hockey players when I was younger. I snowboarded and I biked, and you just can't do everything. Hockey's expensive too. But I played a little bit of lacrosse just to see like maybe I wouldn't get bullied as much if I played lacrosse, but didn't really change. It was crazy. I didn't really have a good experience with hockey kids in town, and I got bullied for biking. I was not wearing the right clothes or whatever it was, and I got bullied a little bit. And then it's funny because you go to the bar now and those same high school heroes want to buy you a drink and try to act all super cool. It's like, fuck off. Like, you were such an asshole to me when we were kids. And yeah, it's just the way she goes. But didn't play hockey.
Did you have like two separate lives? Were you like the kid who was bullied in high school and then you had your bike world where you're cool?
Well, I think coming into high school, I was riding a lot more. And then actually this he wasn't my older brother, but he was basically my older brother. And he was a really good mountain biker as well. And he was like shooting with Haruks and stuff back in the day. And he was part of the cool kid club. And so he took care of me for sure. And definitely had, I guess, a bit of a second life there, but it was just high school drama and shit, But I had a good career. I hung out with the snowboard kids, and I tried to make a go of that. We all kind of did when we were younger, and some of the dudes made it. And yeah, I just kind of stuck with mountain biking.
You're not far from Sun Peaks. I think that would probably be the place you would go to ride.
Yeah.
Were you able to make it up there a lot as a kid? I mean, were you snowboarding every weekend?
Yeah, every weekend. I had to play school sports throughout school. My parents made me, and basketball was my thing. But we went up to the Sun Peaks every weekend or so with the family and whatnot. But then deeper into grade 10, 11, basketball was taking over a lot of time. But we had the same coach and basically the same team from elementary school to high school. But then when I played in grade 11, the senior coach, it was his kids last year on the team. So he wanted to coach that year. And my coach wasn't there. It was our team. And I just remember this one game, he sat me on the bench because I skipped a practice to go snowboarding the weekend before. And so I'm all suited up. I had my family there and everything. And then I didn't get put on, and halftime comes around and we're in the locker room. Like, dude, what's going on? Am I playing? And he's like, no, you're not playing today. Blah, blah, blah. I just quit right then there in the spot.
At halftime?
At halftime, yeah. I just took all my gear off and just stormed out of the locker room. My parents and family were like, oh, what's going on? And that was it. And then did a lot of snowboarding. That's where my heart was then, especially in the winter. And we had a couple of good winters back then. That's what all my buddies were doing. And, after high school, we all rented houses up at the hill for the winters. And that was a lot of fun. Did that for a couple of years. And definitely some really good memories back in those days.
So when you quit a basketball team at halftime, I would think it's probably a teaching moment for your parents. What do they say to you when you come out and you've quit and they're like, wait, there's still the second half?
They were a little bummed, but I think they knew. I was pretty crushed that the coach put me on the bench fully dressed and knew that he wasn't going to play me. You're a young teenager and you're sensitive to things like that. So I was just over it at that point. We didn't really get along, this coach and I. And yeah, I felt bad. Felt like I left the team down a little bit, but they understood. They knew where my heart was.
You ride moto as well growing up.
Yep.
The way that I look at anyone with a moto background when I see it in ski or snowboard is they pin it all the time. I mean, there's a kid named Wing Ty Barrymore in ski halfpipe, And he goes like 5 feet bigger than everybody else, given he blows up all the time. But he's not afraid to pin it.
Right.
And I feel like for your riding, I mean, does moto have an influence now today?
For sure, yeah. I rode a lot of moto when I was younger. I didn't race or anything like that, but I definitely grew up with them. And I remember riding this iconic trail in Kamloops. It's no longer there, but Rose Hill. And I lived right next to it. And we used to go ride on the motos kind of secretly here and there. We'd kind of get busted by the mountain bikers. They obviously weren't too stoked. But I would just shut my moto off and ride it dead, no motor, and just coast down the trail as if I was on a mountain bike, just so I could get the experience for it. But there was always a couple big jump lines out there. And yeah, definitely motoing. You're going fast. And that definitely played a huge role for me in biking. Like coming from racing BMX and riding moto, it was the most perfect transition to getting into mountain biking. Everything just made total sense to me. And I wasn't scared to go fast and had like some of that track skill for jumping and stuff like that. So it was a really good crossover sport for me to get into.
Now it is time for me to take a quick sponsor break. And the first one up is Evo. And all winter I've been telling you that there is no better place to get your ski and snowboard gear. And that's true. The folks at Evo stores in Denver, Seattle, Portland, and Whistler live and breathe the sports they sell. And now that it's spring, it's time to think about your bike. And whether you need service or a brand new bike, Evo has you taken care of. They have the best brands, offer great service, and they know what they're talking about. If bike isn't your thing, Evo is also the best one-stop shop for surf and wake. If you can't make it to a store, Evo.com offers the best user experience in action sports, free shipping on orders of $50 or more, and a low price guarantee. You can find out all about the brands, the events, Evo trip, and a whole lot more over at Evo.com. My next sponsor is Rescue Water, and each week I tell you how Rescue Water is proactive recovery. But what does that mean to you? Well, think of it like this. If you're really tired, you skip the coffee and grab an energy drink. Well, if you really need to hydrate, like after you get off the hill, finish a workout, or get home from a big night, make the smart choice and drink a cold Rescue Water. It replaces electrolytes much better than your traditional sports drink. It's a difference I can feel every time. It works. Make it work for you by heading over to rescuewater.com. That's resqwater.com and save 20% on a 12 or 24 pack case with the code RESQWaterTPM. That's all one word. Rescue Water is also available on Amazon. Wrapping it up here is another iconic Seattle brand. I'm talking about Stanley. Remember that green steel bottle that your grandpa took to the mountains? The one that kept his coffee hot all day long? That's a Stanley. And since 1913, they have been the pioneers of retaining cold and heat. No product works for 48 hours like a Stanley. And to celebrate camping and drinking season, I convinced the folks at Stanley to let me give 30% off site-wide to show listeners. It's a limited time offer. To get it, you need to head over to stanley-pmi.com, buy a growler, some pint glasses, a legendary bottle, whatever, and enter the code POWEL30, that's all one word with the number 30, at checkout, and you will get 30% off site-wide. Those are my sponsors, and now we will get back to Graham Agassiz. BMX racing, you mentioned it, but you did that from 7 to 17. At age 13, you end up getting on your local shop team, and I feel like that's a pretty big deal, like step one to your Crew Jones story.
Yeah.
What do you get out of being on a shop team? Knowing that you're part of that crew?
Pretty much, yeah. Like there's really not a whole lot of support there. I mean, yeah, like get my bikes worked on and stuff for free, and
T-shirt and sticker?
Yeah, T-shirt and sticker and a jersey, and you say you're sponsored. And as a kid, that's what you think a sponsorship is. But they definitely helped out. I mean, I was at a weird size too. Like I'm not the tallest kid, so I ran kind of a weird, different frame, bit of a custom build. So there were some mods we had to do, this and that, but it was fun. I mean, my parents were really cool about it, but I mean, there was kind of like the hockey parent mentality with a lot of the other kids and stuff. And, you know, when you get like kids' parents going after you in the parking lot because you took their kid out in a berm and stuff, it's like, this isn't cool anymore. And, you know, once I'm getting a little older and it's a lot of traveling and stuff, it would have been cool to maybe chase that, you know, Olympic dream or something, but, you know, mountain biking, it was just taking over. Once I started watching the Disorder films and the Collective and living where I do, it's hard not to go on and get into that.
I look at the race world as a totally different vibe from the world you're in now. I mean, you're there to beat someone, and progression of that sport comes in tenths of a second. And I think that riding creates a jock-like mentality, and especially from the parents, like you say. But do you like that type of competition, like beating another person based on time?
No. I just like having fun.
Is it friendly? Because when you travel now, it's you and the boys, you're going to have some beers at night, you're going to get your shit done during the day. But when you're traveling and going to different races, is it like you're looking at the dude like, I'm going to kill him?
No, especially with events like the Fest and stuff. I mean, we're all such close friends, and we're all just out there to progress for ourselves and feed off each other's energy. And as corny as that sounds,
That makes sense. But in the race world,
in the race world, yeah, I feel like you're not as friendly maybe, or some people maybe aren't as friendly. They're in the headspace that they need to be in for the race, and it's a little more serious. I like to be a little more laid back and take light of everything and joke around and get people laughing. But when you can't break other people's shells when they're trying to get into their zone, it's a little different. So this wasn't for me, I guess.
there's a clear winner and loser in BMX racing where, you cross the finish line first, you win. What you do now is more judged than anything, and totally different. The vibe is a lot more lax when it's judged, but it's totally out of your control. When you race, it's all if you ride well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about being judged, or do you just try not to think about it after your run?
Yeah, it's hard. And I mean, especially judging a free ride event is just an oxymoron in itself in a way. And
Yeah.
it's a really hard job for the judges too. I could never do that. I've judged a few rail jams up at Sun Peaks helping like the local board shop here in town, but it's tough, man. Like kids are choked when they feel like they should get a better score on this and that and whatnot. And I've been there too, but it's definitely hard to judge a free ride event. And we've gone through many different judges for Rampage and stuff over the years. And it's hard for those guys. And it's hard because you're putting it all out there on the line and you feel like maybe you didn't get the score you deserved or this and that. I mean, it happens all the time. You see riders that do crazy runs. You're like, oh, how did that guy not score this and that? But there's just a lot of factors when coming into judge contests like that. Maybe you dropped first or one of the first few guys. Generally, that score is probably going to be lower scored than what it could have been. But yeah, tough one. What do you do?
At this point in your race career, I think you're dirt jumping as well, but probably just for fun because it's right below your house and you can do whatever you want. But when do you get your first mountain bike?
I was cutting lawns and doing some landscaping for my dad. Did that for a whole summer and then sold my old KX85 and then saved up and got a mountain bike. It was like the summer going into high school. So how old are you there? I don't even know.
You would have been 14, and I'm guessing it's 2004.
Yeah. So 14, got my first bike, and it didn't last long. I broke it right away, and then I met my big bro, and I bought one of his old bikes, and that thing lasted forever. And yeah, it just took off from there once I got into that.
Is that just every day after school you're going riding?
Every day after school, and we used to have this trail, Rose Hill, and the bike shop was located right at the base of it. And you were just sit at the bottom of the hill with your thumb up and you're guaranteed to get a ride up the road and you'd ride this trail with your bros. And that was just the program. It was so before its time, really. Just roll up to the bottom of the hill, put your thumb up, and the amount of people that you would meet and from like all over the world, like people from Japan, New Zealand, like everywhere were coming to ride this trail. And on a weekend, the parking lot was just packed and you're just hopping in all these different people's trucks and whatever. And that culture was so cool to me. Like just before its time, like we don't really have that anymore, but I wish we did.
Is there a parking lot culture after the day too, like you would find at a ski resort?
Yeah, totally. And I was always pretty young, but I mean, you get into it for sure. And it's really cool. I mean, we kind of have that at the bike park now, a little different, but yeah, it was really cool. Like met a lot of really rad people and like people that I still ride with today. Heroes and stuff like Matt Hunter. And I still remember the first time he took me riding and I had to like go borrow a phone to call my mom and ask if it was okay to be late for dinner to go ride with Hunter, and he like took me to Harper for the first time. And I was just this young kid in a hardtail and just not a good trail rider and blowing up everywhere, but just so stoked. And what an epic day it was. And then he drives me home, and my mom just had to come out with this poster of his, like, and like make him sign it. And I was like, Mom, like, but it's cool. He's like one of my good friends, and we ride together and fish together and hunt together all the time. So yeah, it's really cool.
Around 2006, you end up going to Sun Peaks. You enter a comp there and you win it.
Oh, you've done research.
I do a lot of research. Is that when you start losing your interest in racing?
Yeah, totally. I think that's when I decided to quit racing BMX and really pursue the mountain bike thing.
Were you good at BMX racing?
I was pretty good. Yeah, I was second in BC.
So you're really good.
Yeah, I was all right.
You were second. I guess you weren't the best.
Yeah, I wasn't the best. I wasn't that number one. But then winning that dirt jump, that's crazy you went and found that. I totally forgot about that. But that really was a pinnacle moment for me, winning this small dirt jump contest, but in front of a bunch of people. And I won, I think, like $1,500. And that was a lot of money for a high school kid my age back then.
It's like $750 American.
Exactly. Yeah. No, so that was huge for me. And then I kind of realized, like, wow, I could maybe make a go of this. And that's always every kid's dream. And of course, you got the parents saying, like, well, it's kind of a pipe dream, Graham. You got to go to school and get an education. And, there was always that kind of playing in the back of my head as well. But growing up watching the movie Rad, and then when this happened, like, I really, really wanted to make a go of it. That's been my dream forever. So kind of from that point on, I really just gave her 110% and did all I could to make it happen.
And was anybody bummed that you quit racing? Because I'm sure if you're number 2 in BC, you probably have some race sponsors or people that are supporting you a little bit. And then when you say, yeah, I'm done with racing, it could cause some disappointment for a guy who's like, I've got this kid, Graham, who's going to be the next big thing. And then Graham's like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I didn't really have, beyond the shop sponsor, I didn't really have anyone else supporting me besides my parents, like those were my sponsors.
That's crazy that you can be number 2 in British Columbia and not have anybody supporting you. Because I would think in this country, you might have someone.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how the BMX scene's doing these days in Canada, at least, but it's hard. I was talking to a few different brands, but it's not like we'll give you a bike next year. It was just like, we'll give you the whatever % discount off a frame and this and that. And so for me, it just wasn't really worth it to continue pursuing that. There was the idea of maybe going into the Olympics. Like, it was like Beijing the first time they introduced it. And there was a kid, Tori Nighthawk, that I raced back in the day that did go to the Olympics for that. And I think he would be the number 1 guy, actually. So, there was that possibility, but I don't know, like, mountain biking was just so cool to me and that culture. And I did kind of see, like, I could do this, and I was working really hard at it. And it just made more sense for me, I think, at the time, especially just coming off a win, even though it was something small. But there was like one pro that I beat in it. So I was pretty convinced at that time that I could make it happen.
2008's a huge year for you because I think that's the year you graduate high school or right around there.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason to think about college because you got this bike thing coming together. And it seems like things kind of come together fast for you because you get invited to Bear Cloth's event. You have the Rampage invite and you get on the Clump team all within like 15 months.
Yeah, it happened quick. Definitely 2008 was the big year. My parents sort of gave me a year to make it happen out of high school. And they flew me to Colorado for the Crankworks there back in the day.
So they're fully backing you. They're like, this year we are going to fund you. And if it works, great. If not, you're going back to school.
Yeah, I think they sent me on one trip. I don't know if there's 2 trips. I think it was just the one. I think they actually sent me to another small one on Vancouver Island, a Geordie Lawn event. But Colorado was kind of like back in the day, if you wanted to make a name for yourself and get on the slopestyle tour and scene, this was the one to go to. And I forget what I placed there, but I did really well. And I learned how to flip a step down there. And not too many people were even doing that at the time. And I was just this young kid, young Grom. So I did pretty well there. And then I was really hoping to get into Crankworx Whistler, and I thought that I could have done pretty well at that one, and I didn't get the invite. But Claw, who was judging Jordy Lund's event earlier in the year, he saw me, and I think I did second or third at that one. He invited me into his event, which was like the weekend after Crankworx Whistler. That was a big move for me to go do that, and I was just super excited. And I remember riding practice and just loving the course. Like, it fit my riding style really well, and I actually ended up getting third at that event. Just nosed out Brandon, which was huge.
And it's third with all big names.
Yeah, all the big dogs were there, and so I was stoked. That was like my first time like getting on a podium, and there had been a big check thing for me.
Yep.
And I didn't even get to like stay for the podium. I was traveling with Kurt Sorgi, and he was bummed maybe that he didn't do well, and he wanted to get going home. So we didn't even stay for the award or the after party or anything.
That sucks.
Yeah, I don't stand on the podium very often. I've never had this big check opportunity. And so the one time I could have done it, and I never even got to stay and collect my big check. And then they had it saved for a couple years. And I went back up there to get it one time, and it was gone. So I was like, I really wish I had that one hanging on the wall. But so yeah, I got third there. And then from that, I got picked up by Raceface. And then I think Kona threw me on the clump team, and then it was Rampage that fall. And that was my first Rampage.
And you're like 18 going into that.
Yeah. I mean, there's been younger people and stuff going into it, but for me, I was a young guy going in there still, and not out of my element, but coming from Kamloops, it could be pretty similar, like the terrain, and not afraid to go big for sure. And I remember like working on this line, and Chandra, who's a good buddy of mine, was like, I don't think this is going to work, man. Like, I don't know. You think that's going to work? And I was like, oh yeah, it's just going to go, and I ended up doing my run. And the first run, I actually broke myself off pretty good. And then second run, put it all together. And I think I got like 8 maybe or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it all kind of happened after that. And from there, it was that year that my parents gave me really paid off, and everything kind of started falling in after that.
And when you step to your first Rampage and you see the terrain, does snowboarding and being in the mountain setting, does that help you out at all? The big jumps that you hit on your snowboard, does any of that transfer over?
Yeah, I think 100%. I know I always used to say that back in the day. Just being in a mountain terrain all the time definitely helps. And I felt like I could always pick out lines differently and see things that maybe other people couldn't see. And I think that's definitely played in throughout my Rampage career, just coming up with unique lines and creating things that people didn't see before. And how I manage my way down the mountain too was I definitely take emphasis on the snowboard backcountry, riding those terrain and seeing, like my snowboard heroes and ski heroes ride stuff, and kind of try to emulate that into my riding style.
So that's your first Rampage. And then I would think one thing that most riders want to check off their list, especially riders who came up at your time, is filming with Freeride and New World Disorder. Derek's from Kamloops, and you first met that whole crew when you were younger, and you're the kid helping out on shoots and shit like that. Did they ever let you ride with them back then, or are you strictly the helper?
Towards the end, maybe like the year or two before I started filming with them, I was like, I could ride with these guys. And I was on the Kona grassroots thing, and I was there, and I was helping Kurt a lot back then, film in town and helping him build a lot of stuff. So I was always there, and I would not poach on the shoots, but I would kind of hang out and just see if I can get a couple of clips here and there. And Dee's a Kamloops boy, and I just remember getting the call one time, and I think it was for New World 9. We were going to shoot something, and I think that's when it all started. Didn't get a segment there. I got some bonus footage hits, but then New World 10 was my time to where I was going to get my own segment, and that was just mind-blowing to me. And all my friends and family helped out with that one, and I did a lot of digging and building, and that stuff takes time, and I had a really great support crew going into that one. And the first shoot we did, filmed a lot of it, good half of it, and then I actually lost one of my best friends that summer. It was like the year out of high school. Oh yeah, way she goes, right? It's life.
Yep.
But after that, I started riding a lot harder and out of my comfort zone. there was this one jump that he helped me build, and he's like, "Oh man, like you should flip this, blah blah." I'm like, "Yeah, right." You know, it was like this big hip step down to the left. I'm like, "There's no way it's a hip flip." You know, I don't really do that. And then knee pass, and then I was just hurting, but I was pushing it, and I really wanted to have a good segment, and it was time to shoot that jump. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna flip it for Liam here, and ended up like trying a couple flips on it and crashed the first time. I don't know if you've seen that segment. There's like a hip flip at the beginning, and I just get tossed and I get just filthy and whatever, but I end up landing it. And yeah, that was all for him at that point. And then, you know, the next few years and so on, I just pushed myself a little extra harder. I felt like I needed to kind of live for him a little bit. And that definitely was a huge motivator for me, I guess, in some way, where I just pushed myself as hard as I could. I just wanted to like do him right and make him proud.
Somebody's smiling down like he actually fucking did it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a big move for me at the time. And, you know, once you kind of open that door for yourself on what's possible, then things can really get blown out. So the riding progression definitely elevated after that year.
And I would think another thing that helps your riding progress in general is just support from brands, because when you're doing everything by yourself and struggling to eat or get a beer at night, that's a challenge. But when you start having people paying you and you're able to not have to think about anything but biking, I would think that's when life, it doesn't get easy because it gets harder because you have more things that you have to do. But that's when you know you've kind of made it. And it seems like you figure that out maybe within 2 years of graduating high school. And who's paying you at this point when you're 20 years old?
Like Kona was paying me, and that was just $250 a month.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, I'm pro, you know, I'm getting paid. But then I'm like looking at the numbers with my dad and everything. I'm like, fuck, like I'm still gonna have to work at Milestones and like flip salads and, you know, like toss pizza, do that, because $250 a month just wasn't going to be enough. And then Smith jumped on, like Gabe Schroeder's the man. He was the Smith guy, and he's now my Decline guy. But
do you know his persona of Super Gabe?
Oh man, Super GTV.
Yeah, just making sure.
The best. Yeah. No, love that guy. But I forget what that contract was. It was pretty small, but it definitely helped. But the first couple of years, yeah, like Sombrio was on there, and then Nike 6.0 was a cool one. And then eventually it just all kind of grew. I mean, all those first year, second year contracts are all still pretty small. Like I still had to work my normal job at Milestones there, but they're really cool. I got to take out as much time as I needed. I never actually quit or got fired. I just quit showing up. And then Monster was in 2009, I believe. And that was the big one for me, for sure.
Yep, it seems like the energy drinks always are.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to take a final sponsor break. And Spy Optic is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Yes, 25 years Spy has been crushing it with innovation and style. Based out of Southern California, Spy is a collective of athletes, artists, and product designers who live and breathe action sports. To celebrate this 25th anniversary, Spy is re-releasing the MC3, an ode to Jeremy McGrath's original MC sunglass. The Dirty Mo 2 is a sick update to Dale Jr.'s original Dirty Mo, and the Scoop 2 celebrating Spy's OG Scoop sunglass, which started it all. To get 20% off your Spy purchase, head on over to spyoptic.com, place your order, and then at checkout, enter the code TPM20, that's all one word. To find out more about the products and the brand, head on over to spyoptic.com. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing the Northwest's best beer since 2006, and they encourage everyone to go drink some of their beer outside. Why? Because 10 Barrel is all about the outside. They live and breathe the snow and bike lifestyle, and they support it with events, sponsored athletes, movie projects, and more. Next time you're at the store, pick up some 10 Barrel. And to find out more about the beer that supports action sports, the events, and their pubs, head on over to 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors, and now we'll get back into the podcast. I'm going to compare you to skiers and snowboarders for a second, because I like to talk about money a bunch, because I'm Jewish, and Jewish people talk about money. I don't know if we all do, but I sure do. So in the ski world, if I were to look at the equivalent of you, I would say maybe an Ian McIntosh. And then in the snowboard world, I'd say a level up from Eric Jackson. Because I'd say maybe not quite John Jackson, but in between John and Eric would be where I'd put you in terms of level of athlete caliber. And that's just me, and I could be totally wrong. And I make these comparisons. I would think Ian would probably be in the 150K range. I would think the same level of snowboarder would be around 250K. In the bike world, are the numbers even close? Are bikers of your level able to do pretty well?
Yep, for sure. There is a little money to be had. I feel like I've worked with a lot of my brands for a number of years. There's like a longevity there. But yeah, it's hard to make that kind of money for sure.
No, only a certain percentage of pros will.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm doing okay. I bought my first house a couple of years ago here in Kamloops. And so that was, I think, every pro athlete's big goal once they start making a little bit of money is like, okay, like I need to get a house. So finally got that.
I think it's pretty predictable what a pro like yourself need to have. House, sled, truck, maybe an RV, a snow bike, a shit ton of bikes. And then what else do you need? Do you go see shows?
Couple toys, yeah. I know, a couple shows, yeah. No, I definitely like to have fun. And yeah, when you live in a place like this and, there's a lot of fun to be had. I do a lot of fishing and hunting stuff as well. And that stuff's not cheap either, but yeah, it's all fun.
Do you know Eric Jackson?
I actually met him for the first time last year. I was staying with Paris Gore and Paris was living with him. I just met him briefly and had dinner with him, but I've always kind of looked up to him, and especially with the fishing thing, I've always followed him a lot just because of that. Yeah, really cool guy, really down to earth. Love everything about those brothers and what they're about, and their snowboarding is really cool, and I love what their style is and how they go about it. And yeah, rad dudes.
Yeah, I figured you would hit it off perfectly with him. But another thing with your sponsors, you work pretty closely with them. You have some cool signature products coming out this year, which I promised I would bring up on the show. They have your name on it. Tell me about these products.
Yeah, DeKine and Smith did a collab with myself, and we got to come up with 2 different jerseys, gloves, and a goggle. Was totally not expecting that at all. I just came off maybe 2.5 years of injuries, it felt like. So I was not expecting to get this pro line launched out, and it really came in a left field for me. But yeah, just so exciting, and got to help design it with those guys and with the design team at DeKine. And yeah, I got the acid wash and wolf fur in there and the whatever dude. And yeah, it's really cool. I think they actually sold out of the short sleeve jersey already, which is awesome. And I've been getting tagged by a lot of people who've been buying it and ordering it and stuff. So I think people are really stoked on it all. And the goggles turned out amazing. And
they did.
Yeah, they're definitely my favorite goggle right now. I'm biased, but
I think the Spy goggles are better, but that's me. I'm biased too.
Yeah.
When you say you were injured for a few years and people are still buying your products, I think it's because of the way that you ride. I mean, it's not about wins for people that are fans of your riding. It's kind of the loose style that you have where you're sliding your back wheel everywhere. It's like a more surfy snowboard, ski influence style of descent with checking speed. And even your slams are like full-on tomahawks, like ski and snowboard practice. And I think that's why you're able to have a product that can come out now with injuries before that, because people are a fan of your style, not Graham won this or Graham won that. It's just like, that's how Graham rides. People are stoked on it. That's my takeaway on that.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Cheers.
You brought up injuries, so I'm going to bring up an injury. In 2014, I believe it is, you are going mock, I don't know how fast, and something happens. You go over the bars, probably face first into the ground, and you break your back, which I feel like is every athlete's worst nightmare. Take us through that one.
Yeah, it was my neck, actually. But
neck, sorry.
Yeah, a section of trail that if you're from here or you've come to ride in here, you've probably ridden countless times way out in Sabinaw above Kamloops Lake. And there's this moto hill climb, and you ride it downhill on your bike, and it's really fun. And kind of the goal between like Hunter and a couple other buddies is to try and do it, with no brakes, or like how long can you go down the hill white knuckling it without touching your brake levers. And you're going, roughly 100K down the hill. And I don't know what happened. Like I said, I've ridden it thousands of times. and it was last light. I was filming with the Sherpas there. And I don't know what happened. I was coming down, I was on a heater, and right as I got into the compression, like I rocked my dom, so I really don't remember a whole lot of everything, but I don't know if there was a stick across or if I clipped my pedal on a sagebrush, but I mean, there's two different angles of it, but all of a sudden I just get like chucked all my weight forward on the bike, and I'm doing this huge endo, and I just like hit the ground so hard, and like the one shot from the ground looking at the compression, my head turns backwards and I'm probably just out at that point.
Yeah.
And just ragdolled. And the only thing I can really remember is being on my hands and knees. And it's crazy because I had gone to like a sports psychologist because I was worried about breaking my neck like earlier that year.
Whoa.
And I had gone to the hospital twice because I thought I had done it earlier twice that year. And then I just remember coming to like on my hands and knees and being like, it's definitely fucking broken. And I just kind of slowly got down, and poor Matty Miles was the first guy there, and I'm having this guy C-spine me and just like hold me, and it's cold, like it's fall time and the sun's down, and we're pretty deep in there, and it took a long time for the ambulance to get in there, and it's a rough road, and I got a lot of hair, and my hair was just covered in this little cactus, and I was a mess. And then I'm in a neck brace with cactus in the back of my head, you know, like for hours. And yeah, that one sucked. And the brace wasn't even the right fit. And yeah, it was pretty loose. But yeah, what a horrible experience that was. But yeah, it happens, man. Like it could just happen on something that you've ridden countless times. Like you just never know. But I mean, I was super lucky that it was just, I mean, I broke my C6 in two places, and they fused that to my C7. And that was 3 months in a neck brace. And then I was back after it.
And what are the effects of that to you today?
I mean, I definitely don't have like the full motion that I used to, for sure. It's definitely stiff. I get a little arthritic-y in there. And often I feel some nerve things in my hands from time to time that just kind of come and go.
Huh.
Yeah. It's one of those things like you don't really talk about too much, but then you like meet someone who's had a similar injury. They're like, "Do you ever get that in your hands or whatever?" And like, "Oh yeah, like yeah. Sometimes the index finger and the thumb can go numb, or like not like completely shut off numb, but
Pins and needles, kind of.
yeah, just a weird kind of thing." And like I still have strength there, but I'm sure you lose a couple percentages of the strength on when it's happening. But yeah, it's all good, but definitely the range of motion isn't quite there, and I need to do a better job wearing my neck brace, that's for sure. I just like to be super casual and loose when I ride, but I definitely bring the neck brace when I'm doing Rampage and stuff, but I should do a better job of wearing it full time.
Personal decision, but I can totally see why you don't wear it all the time.
When you're wearing it, you're thinking about it too, so it's like, I don't want to think about it. I definitely don't want to do it again, that's for sure.
Yeah. Through this, I mean, you were filming with the Sherpas, and then you eventually, I think this movie becomes Ashes to Agassiz. And when you film with the Sherpas, you know you're going to make a movie that's going to be artsy and different than probably anything that's been seen before in bike, because those guys make some really beautiful, very weird, and different stuff.
Yeah.
How involved are you in the ideation of this movie?
Quite a bit, for sure. When we were filming it and I got hurt, it was just supposed to be like maybe a 5-minute little webisode that we were going to throw out. And then the injury happened, and a story developed there. And so we started pitching it to all my sponsors and stuff, and raised some money to do this project, and it became this film. So it was a cool experience, I guess, you know, like through the injury, we got to create a film out of it. And yeah, working with those guys, like you said, their style is very unique for sure. And we kind of came up with a lot of concepts like right on the spot. And I really wanted to do a film that wasn't like a PG, just for the kids film. Like I want it to be something that the adults would watch again and again and stuff as well. So there's a little bit of 14A or 18A content in there, but it was just us having fun and being creative and coming up with weird concepts and ideas over maybe too many cocktails or something.
And what's the reaction from the bike world? Because I'm sure there's not that many videos with that much nudity and guns in it.
Yeah. It was really good, actually. And at first, I think people were uncertain about because it was really different from everything else. But I mean, I still get people coming up today, like within the industry, and like, fuck, like I watched that film the other day. Man, that's so sick. Like what you guys did was so rad and cool and creative. And so I think that's like the best part is like people are still talking about it and still go back to watch it to kind of, I don't know, get inspiration from to do their projects and whatnot. And yeah, it was a really fun experience for sure. And working with those guys is awesome and love those dudes.
And it seems like they try to weave in demons throughout the movie, and it makes it seem like you have personal demons just because of them saying it in the movie. I think you only take like one shot of Jack Daniels in it, but when they kind of bring it up. But I'm sure you like to have a good time. And after watching the movie, it made me think to myself, do you like to have too much of a good time, or is it just something that you weaved into the story?
Yeah, there's a bit of that for sure. I mean, I had mentioned like I lost my best friend a year out of high school, and that definitely affected me for sure.
Drinking heavily and then just no limits on your bike?
It wasn't bad. I definitely seen people go over the deep end. I wasn't bad, but in excess, maybe when you're having a good time, yeah, maybe here and there. But as most people do, I'd say when they're out. But yeah, I mean, and then with the injuries and stuff, I mean, it's pretty easy to get down a rabbit hole, especially when you're in bed for like literally 3 months where you can't do anything. It sucks for sure. So there's like some demons in there that, you know, I was fighting off. And I think coming out of an injury like that is like a bit of an overcoming thing, especially to get right back into it to where you were before. You know, a lot of people get kind of scared off when they have big injuries and things like that. And I get it. Anything can happen out there. So it's tough.
That's your job, though.
It's your job, right? At the end of the day, it's what you love and it's all I know. So I know I'm going to get back on the horse every time, but you got to battle those fears. And, you know, it's a constant battle of between yourself physically and mentally for sure.
For that injury, it seems like you're only off the bike for like 4 or 5 months. But when you get back on the bike, how long until you actually feel like yourself? How long until you have your balls back?
Well, it was hard because we were making this film and I really just got thrown right back into it. We started the Fest series and it was the first year of doing my event. It was the first Fest event that we ever had. And we were really big jumps and we were all pushing ourselves. And I had a pretty big crash there where I actually got some whiplash pretty good. And I was definitely like just a bit of a reflection of what just had happened, but I was okay. And it takes those crashes after the big crash to like, okay, like I'm not going to get hurt every time I crash, you know, like you got to rebuild that confidence. But we had a movie to film and there was a lot of features and things that, you know, I wanted to get off the checklist. And so I basically just got thrown right back into it. I didn't really get much of a year to like rebuild myself. I just had to pretend like nothing had happened, just like riding a bike basically, and get back on the horse.
That's probably the best way to do it.
I think so, yeah, for sure.
And then you move to 2015, Rampage comes around again, and you do what you did in 2010 and 2013. You qualify in first again. But in those other years, you qualified in first, and I think you blew up in the finals.
Yeah.
And it just didn't come together. But going into this one, you're qualified in first. You've already done this the past 2 Rampages that you competed in. And is that in your head? Is like, hey, I've been here before, qualified in first, and I just can't fuck up like I've done the past couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, when you come so close and you know it's possible, I knew that I had the line and I knew that I had the run that I had planned. And run one, Cam Zink had dropped 2 guys before me, I believe, and he spun this drop midway through his run and just had this super wild, like one of the gnarliest runs I've ever seen. And I was like, oh my God. And I had this really big drop that, you know, it was like a 76-foot step down. And I was like, I have to fucking spin that thing now. Everyone was thinking I was going to do it already. And I didn't say anything. And deep down, like I knew I needed to do that and I knew I could do it. But Paul Bass was the run before me. Paul Bass was on a heater. Like he had this really gnarly canyon gap thing and he flipped like right near the top and he was like on one of the runs of his lives and he had his crash and that's the one that paralyzed him. And so, you know, the heli came in and it's a lot of downtime all of a sudden. But for me, you already got the switch flicked in your head, like what you're going to do. And like, you're mentally there already. It's just like, you're just waiting for your moment to drop. But then that happens and everything changes. And I just couldn't get in that headspace that I needed to be in. I just couldn't do it. I just did a super chill, safe run, basically a practice lap third. I still got third. And I'll be the first to admit, I don't think I deserve to get third. I think Brandon had a better run than me for sure. And obviously my line scored really well, but it was hard for sure. Like, I definitely couldn't do the run I wanted to do after that.
In 2016 at Rampage, you have a huge crash. That's a huge 360, and it looked like you missed your mark on the landing. There was some wind when you hit that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Looking back, if there wasn't the pressure of the competition right then, would you have normally waited it out until there was no wind?
Yeah, totally. Like, we were all at the top, like, it's way too windy. And this was like one of Claw's last Rampage events, and his line wasn't really affected by the wind too much. It was pretty protected. So he just like, fuck it, I'm just going. I think he like went in front of a bunch of people who were supposed to go ahead of him, opted out, and he just went. And then it was like, now like the contest has started. So we were all kind of forced to go in the wind there for sure. Wasn't the most ideal conditions for us, but kind of the story of our lives with Rampage. But yeah, it was definitely a little windy when I went, and we probably could have spent a little more time working on that landing, but it's a lot of work in a short period of time to make that line as perfect as it can be. So a couple factors there, and I was just off by like a foot, and it was enough to totally destroy myself. And I was gonna say I walked away. Well, luckily, but I didn't walk away from that one. I definitely got wrecked and snapped my iliac crest on my pelvis off, and that one sucked for sure. That was a lot of pain. No shock, just felt everything. And I remember doing the leg check right away. And I mean, I was lucky that I smoked that rock off my hip and not my torso.
Yeah.
That could have really exploded my insides. Yeah, it was a scary one for sure. Not a fun ambulance ride. I mean, it's like a Hummer ambulance thing that they take you out to like the main road to get to the other ambulance.
Yeah, that must have been miserable.
It was miserable. Yeah, it was the most uncomfortable thing. Like, I can't imagine being a senior citizen breaking their hip or pelvis. It's the worst. It's their second biggest bone next to your femur. It's not a fun one. Very uncomfortable.
And then you go four-wheeling to go out.
Yeah, exactly. And like a rough rig, a rough road with no painkillers or anything. Like, they were giving me laughing gas or whatever, but my blood pressure was like at 60 or something. And I was super guarded in my stomach region. So they thought that I was like having quite an internal bleeding situation as well.
Oh, man.
And they're like, we're going to get you to the hospital as fast as we can. Like, we're doing everything we can, blah, blah, blah. Like, you should call your family. And I'm like, call my family? Like, am I okay? You know, like, it was really emotional. And I had to like call my parents, and, I got a bunch of family and friends there, and there's a bit of a delay from the live feed to what's actually happening, but they already got the call from someone else. And so they were really upset. And, I'm giving them the call, like telling them that I love them and that they're going to try and get me there as soon as they can to fix me. And it was,
Jesus,
it sucked, man.
Yeah, man.
I get goosebumps thinking about it now.
Yeah, it's like I'm welling up in tears almost hearing it.
Yeah, it sucked. But luckily it was all good. But I did have a little bit of internal bleeding, but not enough to kill me, I guess. But yeah, it was a rough one.
Now I'm going to go to the Jewish part of me. Do you have to go to a U.S. hospital?
I did, yeah.
And do you have to pay for that?
I got good insurance, yeah. You have to have a good insurance thing actually to be at the event. You need to have proof of insurance and this and that.
Okay.
But I was all dialed in because there's been some nightmare stories in the past with that event too, and with people coming out with $150,000 medical bills and this and that. But luckily I was all good and taken care of. Stayed at a really nice hospital in St. George, had my own room and room service. And yeah, they made me really comfortable. And they flew me to Vancouver. Then a private ambulance picks me up in Vancouver, brings me to the Kamloops hospital. Then I was in the ICU in the Kamloops hospital for like 3 or 4 days because I had toxic poop in me or whatever. So bit of a process, but yeah, eventually made it home. And 3 or 4 weeks living on the couch, and then I was sledding at like 8 weeks, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, it healed pretty quick, but the first 4 weeks were complete hell. Anytime you moved your body, you just felt it grinding and moving and shifting, and I was like, how is this thing going to heal if it keeps like doing this? And eventually it's just such a big bone that just calcifies up and you're good to go after a little while.
Man, well, 2017, you have an ankle injury that forces you to pull out of Rampage early. Then last year, you broke your scapula in a whip-off. I hear that's a painful one, but really, from the other injuries you've had, I'm sure that's nothing.
Yeah.
So you get hurt in August, you're at Rampage in October, and then again, I guess like a drunken sailor, you have to pull out early, but you do get one run in. How frustrating is that when you work 2 weeks on getting your line dialed and you believe your body's going to be able to take it, and then you just can't do it?
It's gut-wrenching for sure. I've put so much, not pressure on myself, but Rampage is like this pinnacle event for myself, not just in the sport, but I've put it on a pedestal kind of. At first, when I got into the mountain bike thing, like I wanted to be a slopestyle guy and, winning Whistler Crankworks, it was like the ultimate goal. And then I slowly moved into more of my riding style was more free ride, and Rampage is like that pinnacle event and just been chasing that dream, and so I definitely go hard there and, I just really want to make it happen at least once. But yeah, it's hard to pull out when it's, you work so hard for it and trying to make it happen. But it's the way she goes, you can't be riding when you're not 110% confident. And even like last year, I probably shouldn't have even rode, but I guess I secured myself a spot for this year.
So that's pretty much what I have for the podcast. We've been going for a while, and I'm going to keep it on time with you. At this point in the show, I have something called inappropriate questions. And
I love this part.
So you know what it is. I like to find someone who knows you and get them to ask some inappropriate questions. And the person that I had ask you questions, you've known since you were probably 10 years old. It's Derek Westerland from Freeride Entertainment. Do you have a great Derek story? Because he is one of the most fun dudes ever. And do you have anything that you can actually share on the show? Because I know Derek doesn't want everything coming out about him. But do you have any good Derek stories to share?
I don't think I can share any of them.
That's fine if you can't share them. We can just leave it at he is an amazing guy.
He is an amazing human, for sure. Yeah, love that dude.
Aggy, buddy, true or false? Have you ever vomited and passed out in the bathroom stall and had the biggest names in free riding pack you home?
So it's a true or false question, but we're not going to let you get away with true or false. We are actually going to get you to tell us the story. But first, true or false?
It's true. That's very true. Yeah.
What happened?
A handful of us were invited to Seattle for a Rampage meeting with a bunch of big wigs there. And yeah, we're having dinner. And I still think I got roofied or something. Like, I really have no idea how it happened. I guess we were at the office before that, drinking some fancy scotch, and I really don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I was blackout drunk, and I woke up in my hotel room, and I can't find my wallet or anything. All the boys had to carry me on home and to the hotel and take care of me, and the old little bird here was a hurting unit.
I've had big nights myself, but I can't think of a night so big that people had to carry me somewhere.
I guess there's one other time, but it's a long story, and we'll save that for another time, maybe.
All right, next podcast, we will go into the longer drinking story. Now, we will go to question number 2.
I don't know how inappropriate it is, but who's got better style on a downhill bike? Brandon Semenuk or Brett Reeder?
Who do you think has better style?
I don't know. I'm just a huge Semenuk fan. He bleeds style all day long.
I had to go with Brandon on that one. He's the OG on a lot of stylish techniques on the everyday tricks that a lot of the kids emulate still today. So, yeah, Brandon for sure on that one.
He is sure fun to watch.
Yeah.
Here we go with our final question from Derek.
Well, from one Kamloops boy to another, we both know we come from a rough blue-collar town. How many times have you been in a bar brawl, and have you ever been knocked out?
Yeah, Kamloops is a pretty rough town for sure. I don't know how many scraps I've been in over the years, but have I been knocked out? The one time I did get knocked out in a scrap was in high school, and it was actually after breaking up a fight, and I'm sitting on the railing for like a 4 set of stairs, and there's like the chair path up on the side, and I'm sitting on the railing, and it's like maybe like 6 feet off the ground, and some kid fucking runs in and sucker punches me with a fist filler. and I go face first onto the ground, knocked out, came to in the medical thing. But yeah, that's the only time I've been knocked out in a brawl.
Every time I've been to Kamloops, I've been to that skate park, and every time I've been there, people don't like rollerbladers up there at all, which is fine. But I've been in like huge fights every time I've been there. Not me personally, because I kind of stay out of the fights, but just like 50 rollerbladers, skateboarders, and BMX guys fighting because some people are on rollerblades.
I don't know what's in the water here, but I mean, it's definitely made us tough for sure. I think I could probably take a lot of beats on the bike because of it. That's for sure. That
is Kamloops for you. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It was awesome talking to you. You're a laid-back, chill dude who just seems like a regular guy who happens to be a fucking badass on a bicycle, and that is awesome, man. Have a great day.
Yeah, cheers, buddy. Thanks for letting me do this. Appreciate it. It's fun.
So that was time with Graham Agassiz, and what a refreshing conversation. He's as laid back as they come, and he seems to live his life like he rides his bike, loose and fun. His season is just getting going, and from what I got out of the podcast, to Aggy, Rampage is everything, and he hasn't won it yet. Hopefully, we'll be able to see him head into Virgin, Utah this year, healthy. And if that happens, well, like every year, it could be Aggy's year. He's one of those riders who has the vision to pick the winning line. He goes absolutely huge, and he has a style like no other. It'll be fun watching regardless, but after podcasting with him and meeting him at Rampage last year, it would be really cool to see Aggy on the podium this year. But who knows? That's the show for this week. Now, I want to ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on. Email me with any questions or concerns. My email is mike@thepowellmovement, and I will get back to you. And finally, I want to thank my great sponsors, Evo, Spy Optic, Stanley, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Rescue Water for supporting the show. And thank you for listening. Have a great week, everyone.